Canada's Liberal Party has revoked the candidature of Chandra Arya, an Indian-origin MP who has previously been the only leader vocal about the Khalistani attacks and their threat to Hindus in Canada. According to a report by the Globe and Mail, which is a local media outlet, the ban has come due to Chandra Arya's visit to India in August last year and his association and ties with the government of India. The Liberal Party claims that Chandra Arya did not inform the Canadian government about his meeting with Prime Minister Modi. But the Indian-origin MP has rejected this charge, claiming that he has been removed because of his outspoken advocacy on issues important to Indian Canadians and his firm stance against Khalistani extremism. This move comes days after Canada accused India of interference in their snap elections. After the appointment of Carney as the Prime Minister of Canada, the Ministry of External Affairs had expressed hope in a reset of ties and urged Canada to shun extremism again. But the Liberal Party under Carney has made it clear that they will stick to Trudeau playbook through wild charges and barring their only Indian-origin Member of Parliament from contesting the election. Let's start this conversation. Joining me on the telecast are my panelists and Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. I start my conversation with you. How is this going to impact the decision that has been made by the Liberal Party to revoke the candidature of Chandra Arya from contesting the elections when Canada goes to poll? What kind of implications it will have on the Canadian public and the Indian-Canadian community living there?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. You have rightly pointed out to these two very important aspects. What will this development have as an impact on the Indo-Canadian community and on Canada as such? Well, the Indo-Canadian community has been quite worried about the growing influence of the pro-Khalistani elements, the Sikh extremists, on the political mainstream of their country. Let me mention that the developments relating to Chandra Arya are clearly to be seen in the context of the trend of policy which the Liberal Party is following. You know, India-Canada relations had sunk to the rock bottom because Justin Trudeau allowed a wide range of anti-India activities to be carried out by extremist Sikhs who constituted his vote bank. And it was being hoped that if he was ousted and the Liberal Party appointed a new Prime Minister, then perhaps India-Canada relations would improve. But these hopes seem to have been belied. And although now Carney is Canada's Prime Minister, the outcome of the Liberal Party's vote bank politics is that Canada continues to be a hotbed for anti-India activities by extremist Sikhs. Now, let me recall that at the conference, the NXT conclave, which was organized by your channel last month, Stephen Harper, who was the Prime Minister of Canada before Justin Trudeau, said categorically that the Liberal Party has become infiltrated by Sikh activists who want to carve a separate state out of India. They are pro-Khalistanis. So therefore, in this background, it doesn't come to me as a surprise that the Liberal Party has revoked Chandra Arya's bid to run for the party's leadership and also prevented him from running for re-election in his constituency, which is the Nepean constituency, part of Ottawa. So the Canadian government and the Liberal Party have not provided any specific reasons for blocking Arya. But according to a report in the Globe and Mail, which cited very high-level sources who had top-level clearance, Arya had not informed the Canadian government about his trip to India. Now, this is the excuse, but the real fact is that Arya was quite outspoken in regard to his criticism of the Liberal Party. And in fact, he had even said that Khalistani elements had managed to enter the Canadian police forces, which is why they were acting very rough with Hindus and so being very supportive of extremist Sikhs. So there is a wide variety of facts which have to be seen in the context of this particular development. It's not to be seen as a single development, but it reflects the broad context of Canadian politics. And Chandra Arya, who is a Hindu and who is outspoken in his criticism of the Liberal Party for having close ties with the Khalistani elements, he has paid the price for this particular reason.
Yeah, he most definitely has, Ambassador. I'm going to quickly get in Professor Madhav Nalapat also into the conversation with me. And Professor Nalapat, in the last week, there have been strong allegations and unwarranted charges against India that have been made by the Canadian government, which is led by the Liberals right now. The CSIS has come out and claimed that India has the capability and the intent to interfere and meddle in the elections that are going to take place in Canada. And just 2 days ago, there was this vehement, I don't know from where this charge has come. It is, I don't know which playbook does the CSIS pick its plots from, but here it is, a big claim being made that Pierre Poilievre, who is the leader of opposition, who is the leader of the Conservative Party, was elected with the support of the Indian government, providing him all sorts of support, funding, etc., so that he is brought to the top of the race and elected as the leader.
Well, the fact is, Megha, it's a stifling of democracy by the Liberal Party. The reality is even Justin Trudeau did not dare to basically throw out a party MP on such specious grounds, obviously specious grounds. I want to remind you, Megha, Chandra Arya has not advocated violence against any state. Leave aside the Canadian state. He has not glorified violence, nor has he funded groups that have basically caused violence in the world's biggest democracy, part of the G20. And that is the democracy led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He has only defended the rights of Hindu Canadians to live on a basis of safety and equality with every other Canadian citizen, which is a fundamental right in any democracy. Now, for this, the man has been turfed out. I want to remind Prime Minister Carney, actually, I had very high hopes of him, given his background, but he seems to be following in some respects in the footsteps of his predecessor, that look what happened to Justin Trudeau. After all that flirtation with extremist elements, he lost the prime ministership. Why are you heading in the same direction as a man who lost the prime ministership and because of which you are now the prime minister? So I want to say very clearly, Megha, even from a political point of view, it makes no sense because the Hindu community, the Hindu Canadian community is at least among the top three, if not at the top of the table when it comes to per capita tax collections and among the top, the bottom lowest where it comes to per capita crime. That being the case, it's a model community. Chandra Arya has pointed this out in the Canadian Parliament multiple times. And I saw meeting Prime Minister Modi as the leader of the world's biggest democracy. World leaders meet him all the time, including MPs. So this is just an excuse. And frankly, Mark Carney is basically identifying himself through this with Hindu phobia. Whether he wants to or not, he's identifying himself with Hindu phobia because the only fault of Chandra Arya is that he's a Hindu in Canada. And frankly, I'm sorry to say, Canada is a wonderful country. The people are a very friendly people. But I'm sorry to say that this kind of behavior was not expected from the new Canadian Prime Minister. Thank you, Megha.
Okay, I also have with me Major General Dhruv Katoj, and let's hear it from you with regards to the rather complicated situation that the Conservatives, I think, find themselves in currently, because after Justin Trudeau stepped down, there was a glimmer of hope amongst the Conservatives, because a large number of people in Canada, the Canadians, were sick and tired of the way Trudeau has been running operations in the last several decades that he has been the Prime Minister. High inflation, facing recession, talking about high grocery prices, the subprime crisis, the property prices skyrocketing, and all these issues were plaguing Canada, and the Canadians were in the hopes of wanting a change, bringing about a new leadership, were likely to vote for the Conservatives. And suddenly, with Donald Trump deciding to put forth the tariff war against Canada, it looks like the Liberals are gaining traction again amongst the locals, amongst the population. Do you think this is on a larger landscape an issue that India will have to? It's going to be difficult for India to figure out a situation, because perhaps the Conservatives were a better bet for India and the government of India to deal with than the Liberals, whether it is Justin Trudeau or, for that matter, Mark Carney.
Thank you, Megha. Megha, I just want to, before I get to answer this question, I just want to give a little bit of, think the way the Canadian elections work out. Now, they have got 338 seats, which means 169 seats are required to form the majority. And the two major parties are the Liberals and the Conservatives. As of now, the Liberals have got 152 seats and the Conservatives have got 120 seats. The elections are going to be held next month. Now, if you look at it, there are two parties which are the very small parties which make a difference. One is the Bloc Québécois. They are advocating for an independent Quebec. They have got 33 seats as of now, and the other is the New Democratic Party, which is the Jagmeet Singh Party, which is basically the pro-Khalistani element. Now, neither the Liberals nor the Conservatives are going to go with the PQ because they are advocating for independence, so aligning with them doesn't really matter. Now, because they are falling short of that magic 170 mark, Jagmeet Singh becomes a very strong force. And they are listening to this fellow. The problem is when the elections are going to be held next month, if no party, either the Liberal or the Conservatives, gets to that 169, 170 total, they will need the support of Jagmeet Singh. Professor Nalpat spoke about the Hindus doing very well, but that is totally irrelevant. They don't have any political party which is representing them. So the Hindus are voting for the Conservatives, they are voting for the Liberals, and they don't have their own separate voice which can act as, which can influence the electorate. So Jagmeet Singh, with just 24 votes, is the spoiler in the game, and he is a Khalistani. That makes everything very clear. I have got a feeling whichever party, whether it's the Liberal or the Conservatives, they will wait for the elections. If they can get a majority on their own, Jagmeet Singh is going to be sidelined. If they cannot get a majority on their own, whether it's the Liberal or the Conservatives, they are going to pander to this man, and Canada will remain a terrorist state. Today it is a terrorist state. It is exactly similar to what Pakistan is. Pakistan is a terrorist state, Canada is a terrorist state. And I don't think that leopard is going to change its spots, regardless of what happens. India will deal with the situation whichever way it is. But I think we have to wait till the end of next month, let the elections come out, and then we'll play our cards. Megha.
I also have me Surinder Singh Lali. Surinder, situation is India at this point of time playing on the back foot, because there has been no response, no sort of a counter response that has come from India's side amidst this absurd claims and allegations being made of India's alleged interference and meddling in Canadian elections. This was the claim that had been made in the last time around. Justin Trudeau came to power. The allegations have already started flying. Pualiev's appointment, his election as the leader of opposition, as the leader of Conservative Party. And do you think it is reasonable for India to keep its mouth shut and see how things are playing out in domestic politics in Canada, or should there be strong statements made from India's side as well? Because China did come out as soon as the statement that was released by the Canadians about a possible Chinese interference. China did come out with a statement and called it absurd.
Thank you, Megha, it's a pleasure and honor for me to be here. And Megha, it's beyond my pay grade to advise the Indian government on how they should react, because they're far more capable, competent individuals, and especially our nimble and deft foreign minister understands this as a career politician far better than I would. But Megha, to me, I come with a very heavy heart, because this is not just, Chandra Arya in question. It's a big blow to the Hindu community. I mean, I've lived and worked in that country for a while. I mean, there are such small, there's such strong lobbies that the Muslims, the Jews, the minorities, even the Aga Khanis for that matter. I mean, a community as small as Aga Khani has their own auditorium, but we the Hindus don't. So for me, I think it puts a lot of Hindus on the back foot, because we would not have people representing and making the right noises in Parliament, because that's how these economies are. There have to be lobbies. You have to be in the right place at the right time to, make your point. And, for us, especially the Hindus, I think we've been a very divided lot, not just in England or in America or all across. And I think I've lived almost half my life outside India. If any community across the world makes the best immigrants, it's us Hindus. I mean, within 15 days of landing in any country, irrespective even sometimes the immigration status, an average Indian gets into the American way of life and gets himself a job, even if he's working off the record. And how many times have you heard, us going and asking for a little India and our laws and, our this thing? So we make some of the best immigrants across the world, and it's extremely sad that a country which has never attacked any other nation. Yoga and meditation is the biggest gift we've given to the world, which is far beyond the Apples and the Teslas and all of what these contemporary products which have a shelf life that the Western economies have created. So I feel, yes, not only would it be a big void and absence of us Hindus in keeping our rights, but it also creates space for the fringe rogues, for the Jagmeet Singhs who will get their pound of flesh like they did the last time in providing, their seats to the elected dispensation at the center. So I feel somewhere the Hindus across the world, especially Canada, need to move beyond just WhatsApp group. They need to get their act together, and they have to make sure that there are people at the right places. Otherwise, as a divided lot, we'll be sorted out like we have been 800 years of the Mughal rule and 200 of the British rule. Thank you, Megha.
I'll come back to you, Ambassador Prabhudayal. So what's the solution? At one point of time, perhaps, were the Canadian Indians right in putting their hopes up in favor of the Conservatives? Because it looks like across party lines, if we are going to antagonize the extremist Sikh vote, by which I mean the NDP, which is the Jagmeet Singh's party, you perhaps not even be able to win the election.
Well, I don't think it's quite like that. Jagmeet Singh's party doesn't seem to be poised to get too many seats. It will be a battle between the Liberals and the Conservatives. Now, that might determine the course of Canadian policy, particularly in regard to India, and that's the subject with which we are concerned about. Now, you said that there's been no reaction from the government of India regarding the Canadian allegations of interference in internal politics of Canada. But sometimes the reaction takes a little while to come. But on a huge number of issues, the Indian government has negating the allegations which have been put up by the Canadian side throughout Justin Trudeau's tenure. So, in other words, there may be a reaction coming, and I'm quite confident that it will set the record straight. Now, what will be the course of the relationship between India and Canada? You know, the world is in a turmoil. There are many reasons for that. Of course, there are global conflicts. There are all kinds of issues which are disturbing the economic scene. President Trump's assumption of authority in his second term and the policies he's pursuing have also caused a lot of upheaval. And the India-Canada relationship is also looking increasingly troublesome. But I have a feeling that all these will settle down one by one, because that is what happens always. There is turmoil, then diplomacy finds a way out. So I'm quite optimistic that diplomacy will be able to find a way out of the present turmoil in the relationship between India and Canada, because neither side can afford the continued deterioration in the relationship.
Professor Nalapat, so then can India hope for pressure building and influence from the Trump administration in any way that it possibly can to allow for Canada to be sympathetic to government of India, India's cause about fighting Khalistani extremism on Canadian soil in the future, whether it is the Conservatives or the Liberals that come to power?
Look, Megha, I'm also an optimist, and frankly, Canada is too important a country and to India, and India is way too important a country to Canada to have this kind of deterioration continue for any significant length of time. I think more work needs to be done by the Hindu community, because the biggest auditorium is the online auditorium, and it's not buildings, it's online space. And frankly, a lot of additional effort needs to be put by Hindu Canadians about the small fraction of a very valiant community, the Sikh community, that is supporting a cause which is backed by Pakistan, the country where, frankly, the Sikhs have suffered such unimaginable tragedies. So I'm still an optimist on that, but I'd just like to point out that they need to focus a little more on messaging. They need to focus a little more so that they can reach the entire Canadian public, and the Canadian public can be warned as to the kind of vipers that the Liberal Party is embracing. And frankly, I think that is going to make a difference. You know, Megha, very well how important the online space is. And I think for the Hindu Canadians, it's an underutilized space. Frankly, given their tech schools, it should be, given the fact that they have a lot of education in tech, it should be an easy task for them to overwhelm the online space to the exclusion of the Khalistani element from the top tiers of a search engine. And I think that ought to be attempted. And if that is attempted, I do believe that we can see a change, because political parties respond to public pressure, and the public are heavily influenced by social media across the world. And Canada is no exception, unfortunately. And secondly, what is happening under the Liberal Party, what's happening to Canada, the drug abuse, the addiction, the violence, all the gang multiplication, all this needs to be brought forward much more clearly. And once that is done, and ordinary Canadians become aware of the facts of the situation, believe me, they're sensible people. They'll vote in a sensible manner. Megha.
General Dhruv Katoch, I would like to bring to your notice about what has been happening in the Parliament under the Liberal government in the past. And one particular incident comes to mind, and that is about this petition that had been brought about seeking an inquiry about the quote-unquote foreign interference in the Kanishk bombing. When it says foreign interference, it actually basically meant that the Indian government and raw officials who according this, and this was a conspiracy theory that the Khalistani extremists have been peddling since a very long time, since the attack, and fingers were being pointed instead at the government of India and the Indian intelligence for having quote-unquote orchestrated the Kanishka attack. Mind you, the Kanishka attack, the culprits, the terrorists, the convicts, some of them have been just allowed to go scot-free, and they do not even want to reopen those files. So forget about reopening those files, they want to seek a fresh inquiry into the matter, and with the government of India and the intelligence services within the country being the number one primary suspect for the attack. Now, how do you deal with a country and a government that is so entangled in this web, where every single terrorist action that is witnessed in Canada somehow is then linked to the government of India?
Megha, very frankly, I think we have to view that with the contempt it deserves and ignore it. That's all. It is contemptible. And for the Canadians to stoop down to that level by which their aircraft was bombed, their citizens died, I beg your pardon, that Air India aircraft which was bombed, but which went from their airspace, and their citizens died in that aircraft. And then they're trying to, whitewash the whole crime from the Khalistani terrorists who did it. Nothing can be more contemptible than those people. As I said, they've got terrorist blood in them, and they are going to pay that price. I've got no doubts about it. But when we are looking at the India-Canadian relationship, I think we will have to wait 1 month. Just let's see which way that election goes. If the Conservatives get 170 seats, it will be a totally different picture. I'm afraid if they don't touch that 170 mark, whether it is the Conservatives or the Liberals, they are going to tie up with the Democratic Party. Between these two parties, if they don't make 170, there will be no change. And I think the same policies will continue. India is big. We live with it. The thing is, can Canada live with it? The problems are going to be Canadian. Let us not be defensive. Just because, they are Canada and they are North and, we consider them the West, they aren't better than us. They need India. India does not need Canada anymore. As far as I'm concerned, we can blacklist Canada and throw them out. They need us. So it is up to them. It is up to their people to select the government they want. It is up to them to keep the Khalistanis out. It is up to them to keep a clean polity. Otherwise, the way Pakistan is being battered by their own terrorists, the same situation will take place in Canada, and they will not be able to handle it. Megha.
Surinder Singh Lally, before I wrap this conversation, quick comment from you again. Between the Conservatives and the Liberals, who is a much lesser evil for India to tackle with?
Unfortunately, I can't comment on this either because I think the jury's still out on this one. But all I have to say is that for us, the optics also make a difference. I mean, despite Donald Trump having Elon Musk on the right side and getting $300 million in funding, they still do the Howdy events and, the Modi Stadium. So I feel sometimes beyond, the strength on social media, there are optics are created which do influence people. And my last point, Megha, is that, you said the Sikh vote. I'm not too sure if out of the 800,000 Sikhs that live in Canada, I don't know if I can really give a number, but if push comes to shove, more than 40,000 on the higher side is what, are on the K element. So I wouldn't call them the Sikh, radicals. I'd just call them the K elements, who are still a very small percentage of the largest Sikh community. He still lives very peacefully and contributes to the Canadian way of life and the growth of the economy.
Okay, all right. On that note, I'm out of time. I thank all my panelists for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views on the subject. We will keep a close eye on the Canadian elections. Just a month to go, campaigning is in full stead. Allegations, unwarranted attacks being made on India, the government of India, and that's something that we will have to swallow as a bitter pill, but remains to be seen how things are going to work out between India and Canada in the coming months. Thanks for watching Newsx.